Hello and welcome to a video on finding the lowest common multiple using prime factorization. Now in the previous video we looked at the lowest common multiple, but we used a listing strategy to identify it. So let's just do a quick recap of that. So first of all, let's list out the first few multiples of 12. And now let's list out the multiples of 20. And now to work out the lowest common multiple of 12 and 20, we just need to identify which multiples are in both lists and which is the first one to appear in both lists. And we can see if we go through both lists that 60 is the first one to appear. So the lowest common multiple of 12 and 20 is 60. Now there is another technique of working out the lowest common multiple of two numbers, and that involves breaking the numbers down into their prime factors. And you may be wondering, well, what's the point of doing that if I can just use this method? And the reason that we use prime factorization is because if we've got large numbers, it's a much more efficient method to use. So let me do an example using these two numbers just to show you how to do it, and then I'll give you a few to do yourself. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to break down both numbers into their prime factors. And this is a bit of a recap, so if you're not sure of how to break numbers down into their prime factors, I encourage you to go back and watch a previous video of mine. So let's start with 12. We can break 12 down into 4 times 3, and that isn't fully broken down yet. We can break the 4 down into 2 times 2, so it's going to be 2 times 2 times 3. So I can express 12 as the product of its prime factors as 2 times 2 times 3. Now let's do the same thing with 20, so let's break down 20. So let's say 20, we can say that 20 is 5 times 4. And again, 5 is prime, but 4 is not prime. We can break down 4 into 2 times 2. So it's going to be 5 times 2 times 2. Now, in order to be a multiple of 12, it has to have a 2 times 2 times 3. Okay, if it doesn't have 2 times 2 times 3 in, then it's not going to be a multiple of 12. So let's write that down. Now, in order to be a multiple of 12, it has to have a 2 times 2 times 5 in. Well, we've already got the 2 times 2. The only thing we're missing is the 5, so we need to multiply that on, so we've got our multiple of 20. So what I've highlighted in red here shows that it's a multiple of 12 because it's got 2 times 2 times 3 in. And now what I've highlighted in purple here shows that it's a multiple of 20. It's got a 2 times 2 times 5 in. So this is our lowest common multiple of both numbers. So we just need to evaluate what this is. So 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12, 12 times 5 is 60. So our lowest common multiple of 12 and 20 is 60. Now this is quite a tricky concept to master, so I want to do a few more examples. So the next one is the lowest common multiple of 6 and 14. So first of all, let's break down 6 into the product of its prime factors. And now let's break down 14 into the product of its prime factors. Now, in order to be a multiple of 6, it has to have a 2 times 3 in. So let's write that down. It has to have 2 times 3. And in order to be a multiple of 14, it has to have 2 times 7. Well, we've already got 1, 2 here, but the only thing we're missing is a 7. So we need to multiply that on. So now we've accounted for all of the factors. This is our lowest common multiple. So the 2 times 3, that shows that it's a multiple of 6. And now the 2 times 7, that shows that it's a multiple of 14. So our lowest common multiple is 2 times 3 times 7, which is, or 2 times 3 is 6, 6 times 7 is 42. So that is our answer. Now let's do the next one. So the lowest common multiple of 18 and 30. So let's break down both numbers into the products of their prime factors. Now let's start off with 18 to begin with. In order to be a multiple of 18, it has to have a 2 times 3 times 3 in. So let's write that down to begin with. So the lowest common multiple, it has to have at least a 2 times 3 times 3. And that shows that it's a multiple of 18, but we also need it to be a multiple of 30. And to be a multiple of 30, it has to have a 2 times 5 times 3 in. Well, we've already got the 2. We've already got the 2 here, and we've already got the 3 here. So the only thing we're missing is a 5. At the moment, this is not a multiple of 5. So we need to multiply on another 5. So we need to multiply on another 5, and now this is our lowest common multiple. So the 2 times 3 times 3 shows that it's a multiple of 18, and the 2 times 3 times 5 shows that it's a multiple of 30. So we just need to work out what this is now. So 2 times 5 is 10, 10 times 3 is 30, 30 times 3 is 90. So our lowest common multiple is 90. Okay, so now I've done a few examples. I'd like you to have a go. So pause the video and see if you can work out the lowest common multiple of these pairs of numbers here. Okay, so let's go through the first one. So the lowest common multiple of 8 and 18. So first of all, let's break down both numbers into their prime factors. Now in order to be a multiple of 8 to start off with, it has to have a 2 times 2 times 2 in. And now in order to be a multiple of 18, it has to have a 2 times 3 times 3. Well, we've already got the 2, we can just use one of these 2's, but we don't have any 3's. So we need to multiply on a 3 times 3. It has to have a 3 times 3. We don't have any 3's at the moment, so we have to multiply on a 3 times 3. So times 3 times 3. So the 2 times 2 times 2 shows that it's a multiple of 8, and the 2 times 3 times 3 shows that it's a multiple of 18. So what is all of this business? Well, this first bit here is 8, 2 times 2 times 2, and then 3 times 3 is 9, so 8 times 9 is 72. Okay, so let's move on to this next one now. Lowest common multiple of 24 and 42. So again, break down the numbers first into their prime factors. Now in order to be a multiple of 24 to begin with, it has to have 2 times 3 times 2 times 2 in. So let's write down all of this business. Now if we move on to 42, it has to have a 7 times 3 times 2 in. Well, we don't have any 7's at the moment, so we need to multiply on a 7. Now it has to have a 3 in, so we've got a 3 here already, and it has to have a 2 in. Well, we've got a 2 here already. So that's it. This is our lowest common multiple. So the 2 times 3 times 2 times 2 shows that it's a multiple of 24, and the 2 times 3 times 7 shows that it's a multiple of 42. So this one's going to be a bit harder to do in my head, but let's give it a go. So 2 times 3 is 6, 6 times 2 is 12, 12 times 2 is 24, and 24 times 7, let's just do that here, 24 times 7, so 4 times 7 is 28, 2 times 7 is 14, plus the 2 is 16, so it's 168. Okay, so moving on to the next one, the lowest common multiple of 21 and 30. So to be a multiple of 21, it has to have a 7 times 3 in. And to be a multiple of 30, it has to have a 3 times 2 times 5 in. Well, we've already got the 3. Okay. Now we don't have any 2's in at the moment, so we need to multiply on a 2. And we also don't have any 5's on. So we need to multiply on a 5 on as well. So this is our lowest common multiple. And again, just to show that, the 7 times 3 shows that it's a multiple of 21. And the 3 times 2 times 5 shows that it's a multiple of 30. So I can see that 2 times 5 is 10 and 7 times 3 is 21. So 21 times 10 is 210. Now let's do the last one, and this might be a bit trickier because we've got quite large numbers here. So again, let's break the numbers down first. So let's start with 28, and it doesn't matter which one of these we start with. Well, let's start with 105 just because I haven't started with the purple one yet. So to be a multiple of 105, it has to have a 5 times 3 times 7 in. And now to be a multiple of 28, it has to have a 7 times 2 times 2 in. Well, we've already got the 7 over here, but we don't have any 2's. So we need to multiply on 2 2's. So the 7 times 2 times 2 shows that it's a multiple of 28. And the 5 times 3 times 7 shows that it's a multiple of 105. And now I actually need to work out what this is, and that's probably the hardest part out of all of this. So 5 times 2 is 10, I can see, and always start with something easy like that. And now 10 times 7 is 70. 70 times 3, well, that's going to be 7 times 3 is 21, so that's going to be 210. And now 210 times 2 is 420. So my answer is 420. Now, the benefit of using this technique over listing is that it ensures that you always get the correct answer, because sometimes listing out multiples of large numbers can be quite tricky. So for example, when we're listing out the multiples of 28, then that's quite a lot of brain work to be doing, and also the multiples of 105. But doing it this way, you're only ever dealing with smaller numbers. So when you're breaking the numbers down into their prime factors, all you're dealing with are these small numbers. The last bit is a bit trickier, but it's still a lot easier than if we were to list out all the multiples. So hopefully you found this interesting, and there's going to be a part 2 to this video, so hopefully I'll see you then. Take care.